So we are the second session for the second day, and which seems very promising day as well. Hope you had some fun yesterday with all the amazing presentations we had, all the discussions in the Hangout space as well. So if you're new to the conference, you've probably seen that we have the Hangout room that is available throughout the whole day. Usually what we do, we have the presentation, go for Q&A, and with the couple minutes that we have in between talks, people usually go to the Hangout space, have a continued conversation. I know especially some questions are hard to do by text, so some people prefer to just even share images and so the Hangout space is a pretty good space for that. So I would recommend in between talks, have a look in there, see who's in there, introduce yourself, don't be shy. I know for some people there, especially newcomers, sometimes they say, "Oh, I don't know, I don't want to turn my camera on, I don't want to turn on the mic, or I don't want to say anything." But we don't bite, at least most of us. So feel free to just join in and participate. By the way, we have here, if you want to make some questions during the presentation, there is a question mark that you see in the chat on the chat area. There is one made for comments and the other for questions. Usually better if you put the questions on the question mark item, because then sometimes the chat's pretty active and then we might lose your question in between. So if you put on the question mark, we'll be sure to get that for Q&A at the end. So yeah, I think we can start. I will present Tetsuo, that's also a board member of ATypI. And Tetsuo, welcome. So you're talking from Tokyo, is that right?
Yes, it's Tokyo. We're in the same time zone, and so as Mariko-san, I believe. And welcome everybody for ATypI Tech Talks 2022. So let's begin the presentation from Mariko Takagi, an associate professor of the Women's College of Liberal Arts. It's all yours.
Hello, my name is Mariko Takagi, and today I want to introduce you my recent study, Emoji Graphy, the essence of kanji visually. I divided this presentation into 4 sections. Like first, I would like to introduce you my previous research, which is the context of this current one. And then I want to talk about my motivation, like why I'm researching about myths and stereotypes of kanji. The next will be one issue I found out, and this is the naming of things and categories. Next, I would like to talk about the challenge of the following research and what I'm going to do after this book. So this research project was supported by Doshisha Women's College of Liberal Arts in Kyoto, Japan. And I will start now with the context of my research and my previous work. And at the beginning, like when I started doing research on Japanese typography, I connected with a PhD at the HBK Braunschweig from 2008 to 2012. And in this research project, I was looking at the visual Japanese culture, connecting it with the writing system, and then explaining how the writing system is visualized by typography. And this became a source or also an inspiration to the following works. In 2014, I presented Hanzi Graphy. And in this book, I'm only looking at the Chinese characters and how you can talk about this writing system without a knowledge or without a deeper knowledge of the language itself. So it's more looking at the visual features and also at the construction of characters. In 2016, I published Kanji Graphy. And in this book, I'm focusing again on the Japanese typography, first introducing the systematic approach of like how the writing system can be explained, and then how it is applied and visualized by typography. So this is very close to my PhD but still it goes deeper in certain areas. And also it is only focusing on the two aspects of writing system and on typography. This year in March, I published Emoji Graphy, and maybe the word emoji could be misunderstood that I am saying like kanjis are ideograms, but in fact, like I designed this book by making the E italic and also baylight. So it is more an approach to demystify kanji and saying that kanjis are not ideograms, but logograms. My motivation. There are 6 myths about Chinese character, which the Francis and Ungar explained in their research. They call the myth ideographic myth, universality myth, emulatability myth, monosyllabic myth, indispensability myth, and successfulness myth. So all those 6 myths are connected and related to each other, but the starting point is the ideographic myth. And this became then also the starting point for my research. So especially because this myth is so strong, in a way like the universality myth and all the other myths are building up on this foundation. And I will just introduce you some cases where this ideographic myth is practiced. You can almost find them in everyday reading. Like one book, I think, which is very widespread, is The Japanese Things by Basil Hall Chamberlain. Basil Hall Chamberlain stayed in Japan from 1873 until 1911. And he was a professor of Japanese language and literature and teaching at Tokyo Imperial University. So therefore, he was really like a scholar at that time about this area of research. And at the same time, like he is one who communicated the idea of what is Japanese towards the West and towards a readership who reads English. And it was also translated into many languages. In this book, he says, and I quote, according to this ideographic system, each individual word has its separate sign, originally a kind of pictogram or hieroglyph. This was like the point of view of an outsider, or maybe like rather somebody who comes from outside of the culture. But there are also many Japanese who talk about kanji as ideograms or ideographs. So one example which I found rather by accident was Kappa Seno's book. And Kappa is a Japanese illustrator, and he traveled the world. Normally, like he is showing the illustration he made abroad or he made visiting different places. But in this book, he talks also about kanji and how he introduced the writing system to a new Italian friend. And there he said, and I quote, most characters are made by combining the shape of things. So a very simplified version of explanation, but the images that I've shown you before are also supporting this idea. Yoko Tawada is a very famous contemporary writer. She lives in Berlin and writes in Japanese as well as in German, talking about Japanese culture, but also about language. And she is actively comparing language of the Japanese language and the German language. In one lecture she held at a university, she said, or she described Chinese picture writing ideograms. So she said kanji are Chinese picture writing ideograms. And in another sentence, she compared it to a character is like a package of meaning. And she also gave us kind of a glimpse into how she reads Japanese. I quote, while I read Japanese, I do not translate the ideograms into speech sounds. The spoken language plays no role in this. So it doesn't bother me that sometimes I only know the meaning of a character, but not its pronunciation. And of course, this happens also to me, but it bothers me. And of course, normally, like, or we have to learn both, like the meaning of a character, but also its phonetic layer. So I was wondering a lot, like why this ideographic myth is so well established, also between Japanese, and also I think among people who are critically thinking about the writing system. And maybe like one source of this lies in the education. I found that in the teaching material for first grade students, there are examples of introducing kanji as ideograms. And I found also like material for teachers, kind of like giving them instruction how to explain kanji. And there it is said, try to connect the shapes of the kanji characters with tangible things, physical objects, pictures, etc., so that students will be aware that kanji are ideographic characters and will develop their interest in kanji. So to make the connection between the ideographic idea of kanji and the character itself seems to be like an attraction for Japanese students, but also for foreign students who are learning Japanese. In the Japanese teaching material, I found this example, so where you have to replace the pictograms by simple kanji. And this is one exercise for the young students. Florian Kuhlmann says, pictographic symbols of this sort can be interpreted, but not read in the same sense as writing. So this is how you would replace the pictograms by kanji. So the one on the left hand always. But with this, there is a kind of a package. So for the character, for the first character in this context, there's a certain way of reading it or pronouncing it. And this is applicable for all the characters visualized here. In fact, like for each kanji, there are different ways of pronouncing it according to the context of a kanji or according to its neighboring characters. But there are certain rules, like how you read it out in this special context or in this special sentence. Another thing that the book is introducing is that there are, of course, steps in between the pictorial representation and the typographic representation, but only like one step introduced. In fact, there are many more. And so this is also like one problem, I think, because it is simplifying very much the evolution of writing system. So let us do a small little game. So maybe you can try to guess it. It will be very easy for people reading Chinese or Japanese, but if you do not have any previous experience in learning kanji, maybe this will be quite difficult. But when I go like slide by slide, you may get an idea what I'm going to tell you or what I'm trying to tell you in the sentence. When I show you then the illustration, the meaning of the sentence is quite clear. So what I've done by clicking slide by slide is that I went from the typeface version of a character step by step towards the oracle-born script and later on to an image. And in the stage of oracle-born script, like which is also regarded as the first written representation of Chinese characters, there is of course closeness or similarity towards the object it represents. But this is only like one element of a whole complex system. Another thing is the naming. And yeah, this naming thing is also connected to the study of a scholar called Xu Sheng. He lived in the Han Dynasty and researched 9,353 characters and put them into 6 different categories. And this system is still valid today when we talk about Chinese characters or when we explain the system behind it. So for the book Kanji Graphy, I translated the 6 terms like here given on the left side in kanji writing. I introduced like the translation on the right. I was not happy, or I was not very satisfied with this at that stage, but my focus in that book was on another topic. So I somehow, left it for a later, deeper investigation. And what is lacking in my translation and is there in the original writing or in the original naming is in the original naming, like each category includes the word moji, which means character or writing. So this was like one thing I wanted to revisit. And I had a second look into different sources. So the sources are mainly written in English and German, and I used those kind of translations of the terms to get an overview. And you will find further sources in my book from 2016 and 2022. So the first 2 categories or the first 2 classes are about creating basic Chinese characters. There's the one method which is often described as pictogram or pictographic method. And this is mainly you have an object and this object is the model for a character. And the second one is often called indication, and there are simple abstract ideas turned into characters. And some of them are still quite recognizable. So you have up and down, or you have 1, 2, 3, like the simple numerals. And those 2 categories are building up, creating the basic Chinese character sets for constructing more complex ones. And those are, for example, constructed by the method ideogrammatic compound, like the way how I called it previously. 2 characters are giving the base for the meaning of a third one, for new one. Or then the radical phonetic, case emoji in Japanese, like where you have one radical giving the phonetic information and the other the semantic information. Then there are 2 categories, mainly talking about the change of characters through use. And those are the quite complicated one. The first one is mainly, again, like keeping one idea or keeping one idea of the meaning and then transforming into new meaning. And the second one is based on the phonetic, and it's like borrowed characters, rebus also called. Again, like Kuhlmann's citation, the term pictographic is sometimes applied to the Chinese writing system in their earliest form. Here, the term refers to the outer form of the system alone, rather than to its mapping relation to language. No writing system is pictographic with respect to its inner form. So they're concluding that maybe at the beginning there was this connection to the shape and also the visual, but this was later on cut. And he's also saying no writing system is purely ideographic in the strict sense of the term, but many writing systems contain ideographic elements. So again, like the question, can you read it? This small little character is like in the stage of the bronze script. And it is a character combining two elements, and therefore it is applying the semantic compound method. So originally it contained this character and this one. The top one is a sack-like container and heated by a fire underneath. And by heating the container, the content in the sack will turn into ash, and the color of the ash is black, and therefore the character became or received the meaning black. And the sack was not very much used, so it changed the meaning, or it was used then for another word, and it transformed into the meaning east, the cardinal direction east. And this is based probably on the phonetics of this word. And the same happened with west and south as well. So this shows that it is not always easy to guess like from the outer shape to its meaning. And maybe sometimes you're totally wrong by doing it. So one thing is that the characters evolved and they changed the meaning by usage, but at the same time, they changed a lot the shape. So going through centuries of usage, they're transformed a lot in shape. And while they look like pictures at the very beginning, nowadays they are quite abstract in shape. So revisiting this chart again, I decided like to use the term method to be connected like with pictographic and indicative to say under this method, the basic characters are constructed. Then for the second two groups, I decided to use the word compound. And then for the first one, semantic compound, for the second one, phonetic semantic, to say like what is combined there. And last but not least, for the last two, I decided to call those in this area extension because they are extending the semantic or the phonetic layer. And sometimes I think graphic helps a lot to explain things. So here you have the single characters, and here on the second half you have the radical compounds. There are logographic semantic based methods of creating characters, and also logographic associative methods, like we have seen the development of black. And then there are phono-logographic phonetic methods. And of course, like two are in the borrowing methods. So even though like I classified or I used the same classification, by showing like how the groups can be positioned, you get an idea that it is not just a transformation of a shape into a character which represent meaning, but rather it is the whole evolution what's behind it. And this is also visible in a chart, like if you compare figures or distribution of characters. Like at the beginning, it was quite flat, like the oracle bones looking into 1,155 characters. There was not a big difference between the different categories, 6 categories. But then when time goes on, at least around the 8th century, you can already see that the phonetic semantic compound system became the most, the strongest class among them. And this category is providing the most characters. Now I will show you some images of the book and let you just get an idea how it looked finally. And there you will also recognize some pages that I've just shown you. So in each chapter introduction page, I'm giving the theme and also talking about the relation between kanji and emoji, because I'm saying characters are not emojis, but they are mojis. And then like those kind of charts combined with descriptive text. And it was to me quite important to this time include a small dictionary where you can look up all the characters that I mentioned in the text before. So this is the book, available by now at MCCM Creations in Hong Kong or from Vormundsweg in Berlin. So the next theme on the table is of course dealing with the Japanese writing system. And I need to study again about this. So this time I would like to look into the typesetting and how the hybrid writing system, Japanese writing system, is prepared to be readable by typography. So there are different themes I just figured out, or I'm just figuring out. For example, how the diverse writing system are united in one typesetting. And then the different units, like how you can recognize a glyph, word, sentence, paragraph, because it works differently to the Latin letter version. And then the different directions, vertical or horizontal. And most of the, or not most of them, but the kanji and also Latin letters and Arabic figures are imported into the Japanese culture. So I want to also introduce how this adaptation happened and what kind of refinement was done to create like one synergy of writing system. And as you can just guess already, the devil is in the detail, I think. So thank you very much for your attention. And I hope to see you maybe next time live at ATypI.
All right, we are back in. Mariko, thank you so much for the presentation. It's good to see. Yeah, I think it was the last time you presented. It was the last tech event. Is that correct? Like a year ago?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was interesting to see also the evolution of your thinking, organizing the ideas and putting together. And because I think it's pretty interesting to see how to organize and create a system, and also to explain to other people how it works. Because sometimes first for you, you're just trying to get your ideas together, and then also I think when you put it as a book, probably some questions may arise that is for yourself, and then you actually get solved when you're trying to explain to somebody else. So yeah, it's been pretty good. There's already a question on the chat about the link for the book. You already posted in there. So yeah, Leonardo, thank you for the question as well. There was also the first one. Maybe you can start while other people might be thinking of formulating a question about the one that Ken did at the very beginning, that you mentioned about the Hanmoji handbook that you said you didn't read yet. And then I think we even have the link for that. Maybe you can share here on the chat. So do you know something about that book or?
I haven't heard about Hanmoji yet, but I think at least I don't know, like if it is that title.
Yeah, because I think that Sue will do. I think you did have the link for that. Maybe you can share with us the link on the chat.
Okay.
Okay, got it. So.
Okay, I see.
Thanks,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a bit tricky because it's especially like this method that I try, not to promote, because I think especially like this method is simplifying Chinese characters too much, and then like you come back like to this idea that all Chinese characters are symbols or visuals, or still related to the visual object. And as many researchers are saying, you can't represent language by visuals, like not 100%. Like if you, for example, give people a bunch of pictograms and ask them to read them out, like everyone will come with another pronunciation and another reading. So in this way, literature will never work, for example. So I think this is very tricky. Like it's a very, very good way to attract people, as it is simplifying. It's making things like also easy to understand, but I think it is simplifying too much. And with this, you create quite dangerous stereotypes, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting also from the pages that you show from the book, that even down how you work with the layouts, also to help to express your ideas. I think it was really interesting as well. And I wonder even if the previous references that you had within this topic, if they do present in that way as well, using like design as well to tell the story, or how much do you think that is important, and how much was the motivation to do that within your book?
Okay, yeah. I think it's important, like, to let people imagine what I'm talking about. Like, if I do it only theoretical, it can be quite tiring, and at the same time, it's very hard to imagine. So I think, like, if I give, the readers an option, like, to see the characters and then to trace them back, like, show them their origins step by step, I think then they can also, although maybe they are not from this writing system, they can still imagine what I'm talking about, and they can get still like the differentiation and also like different aspects of it. So I think visuals and also graphic design can serve there, very much, I would say.
Yeah, because I think sometimes it's a barrier that we find that when you talk about language, but then you don't use design also
Yes.
to improve the storytelling, and then it's hard to get the message out as well. So I think I'd like to congratulate on that. From the pages I could see, like you definitely have that on you, and and definitely gonna help with the readers as well. So you launched the book on March, right? This year. So I wonder if you already have some feedback from the community, or how's going the section so far?
I'm not tracing it back so much. So like from time to time, I get some feedback. It was very interesting because it was similar to the books I released earlier, like for example, Hanzi Graphy or Kanji Graphy. So I get to know like who got it later on. Like it's always like with a few years, time slip in a way. So for example, I was approaching Christa Dürscheid to like write a text like for a project which I'm participating right now, and then she and her like co-writer turned back to me and said like they read my books, like they read already my 2 books. And I had always the feeling like I'm reading their books and being a kind of like fangirl, and then suddenly realizing, oh, they got my book too. So it's very interesting because sometimes you get immediately feedback, and of course, like from people you know, but from other people, maybe it's something like you get to know 10 years later or 5 years later. So I had even like a very interesting gathering in Japan. So for the book, for my very first book I made about Japanese paper making, I got to know somebody almost like 15 years after I released that book. And he said, like, I have one of the 200 copies. And I didn't know that some of the books were sold like to Japan at that time. So it's sometimes very surprising.
Interesting. Is there the next one in mind?
Yes, I announced it a little bit towards the end of this talk. So I'm thinking now to get into the research of how the Japanese writing system works in typesetting. So because I think it is a very interesting construction, like having multiple layers of writing, and then also having extremely a lot of influences from outside, and that all like comes together in one writing system. So I think this is the next one.
Yeah.
And I'm starting already. Yeah. So never-ending project.
Yeah. And the last thing for me, I'm wondering if you felt the short in something about the printed media. Let's say since the delivery was a book, like thinking, for instance, animation and other ways of doing visual storytelling. If you felt that's something that could be explained in different way, let's say, as I said, animation or audio as well, that will help, or if you think it's gonna actually be taken away from the message, or just like being something that wouldn't help.
Yeah, it's very difficult. So I get what you say, because, for example, I like to listen to audiobooks. But if I really like want to quote something or understand it more on a deeper level, I have to read it. So many audiobooks that I loved, I bought later on and read it. So because it's another way of, I think, just storing the information in your own brain, and also another way of getting the information from the content, whether you read it or you just hear it. And I think also the same is for animation or movies. I'm really like a movie lover and animation lover, but still I think like if I want to get to a deeper understanding, I have to read it by myself. Although like the medias like looking or watching and also listening are much faster than reading. But I think there's a different level of understanding and also a different way of storing it later on, and maybe applying it to your own research and writing.
Yeah, perfect. All right, do you have any questions in there as well? Or Tetsuo, if you want to add something as well, feel free to jump in. I know I talk too much. Let me see. So yeah, I think we cover everything from the chat as well. All right, so yeah, I think that's it for now. Hope to see you next year again, maybe. It's like
Yes.
starting presenting either the draft version of the next one,
Maybe, yes.
or like the further developments of these. And because of course we're talking about the book itself, but it's more like about the research, and and as you said, it takes time to get some feedback, or also when you start seeing people actually quoting you on different things, or even questioning you if it's the case, or providing new ideas. But I think that's really important to as a contribution to the community as well. So I think we can actually then invite people as well if they want to have head back to the hangout space, because then you can have more if any other people want to share references, or make further questions, because I know sometimes it's not like a formal question, but you want to share anything that you have related to this topic. So we can continue this conversation over there. So thank you very much, Mariko, for your presentation, Tetsuo as well for being with us, helping me moderate the session as well. See you soon.
Yes, see
Thanks
you.
so much.
Thank you.